Do we have quorum? All right, we do have a quorum. Thank you. Also, before I call the meeting to order, I want to ask the members, those members of the Community Economic and Human Development Committee of SCAG, those members that are calling in by phone, will you please identify yourself now?
Annie Marshall, City of Avalon.
Thank you. We have you, Annie. Thank you for being here. Ready? All right. I call the meeting of the Community Economic and Human Development Committee to order. And I'm going to ask the Honorable Wendy Bucknam to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you would please rise and honor our flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Good morning. Today is Thursday, November 2, 2023. It's 9:34 a.m. Welcome to those members who are joining us today in person at SCAG's Los Angeles offices. As a reminder, if a member of this body is attending remotely, but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public, but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. We are holding this meeting in compliance with Brown Act rules relating to telephonic video conference meetings. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. Just a reminder, to reduce background noise, please ensure that your microphone is muted when not in use. I will now open the public comment period of the meeting. This is the time for members of the public to offer comment for matters that are within SCAG's jurisdiction but are not listed on the agenda. Staff, have we received any written public comments after the deadline of 5 p.m. on Wednesday, November 1, 2023?
Mr. Chair, I can confirm we have not received any comments before or after the deadline. And if I may take a minute to recognize our very own Chair, Yokoyama. Today is his birthday. So congratulations and happy birthday. Thank you for spending your birthday with SCAG.
Thank you, Yvette. Yes, today is my actual birthday.
Happy birthday.
I'm really happy to be starting off the day celebrating my birthday with all of you. Fun day. All right, thank you, Yvette. That was a nice gesture. Thank you. Okay. All right, let me see if I can get back on track now. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any members of the public either on Zoom or in person.
Thank you, Yvette. I will now close the public comment period for matters not listed on the agenda. Review and prioritize agenda items. Would any members of the committee like to review and or prioritize any agenda items? Moving on, I would like to remind everyone to unmute your phone before speaking and state your name during deliberations and whether making a motion or offering a second. And for those who have joined by phone, press *6 to mute and unmute your phone. consent calendar. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any members of the public in person or via Zoom.
Thank you, Yvette. In order to save time, if anyone wants to pull anything from the consent calendar, I ask that we have staff presentations before moving to the roll call vote for the consent calendar. I would like to please remove from the consent calendar for discussion before I take a motion on the consent calendar. I'd like to remove item number 2 from the consent calendar. Item number 2 is CEHD agenda outlook and future agenda items. I'd like to have Elizabeth Carvajal please give us an update on our CEHD agenda outlook and future agenda items. Elizabeth?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Elizabeth Carvajal here. Wanted to provide all of you a brief update on some of the recommendations that were made in the October meeting around future agenda items. We had received a request around including an item pertaining to communication and design strategies for housing production, and that's something that we anticipate putting before the committee. I'm going to work with my team to assess the right timing for this in the outlook and anticipate that would show up in the January item when it comes before you. We had also received a request around Earth Overshoot Day. This is an item focused on the environment, and we would recommend that we defer this to the EEC, the Environment Energy Committee, for consideration. And that is the course for that particular action item, or that recommendation, I should say. And again, these would be reflected in the January outlook, unless there's any questions for me.
Which committee did you say again for the what is it again?
Energy and Environment, the EEC.
And the name of the date, the event?
We had received a recommendation to have an item around Earth Overshoot Day.
Yes.
And this focuses on issues related to resources and the environment. And so my recommendation would be that we pass this recommendation on to the policy committee that covers the environment and energy issues for consideration in their look ahead.
And which committee?
The Energy and Environment Committee, Policy Committee.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Sure.
John Mirish has a question.
I wanted to say that I saw there was a presentation at the demographic workshop by a professor named Maximilian Buchholz, and I thought that would be very relevant for us as well.
Okay.
I would like to suggest that we ask him to do that presentation for us. I thought it was informative, and I think everyone here would be very interested in it.
And what was the subject of his
Kevin, you could describe the exact name of it. I forget the name, but it was about how
but can you get that information to Elizabeth Carvajal?
We will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any members of the committee have any questions or comments about this item number 2, CEHD agenda outlook and future agenda items?
I was going to move the item. Bucknam moves.
Shapiro.
Okay, I have a motion from Wendy Bucknam and a second from Vice Chair David Shapiro. Just wanted to remind the committee that this item, CEHD agenda outlook and future agenda items, will routinely be on the consent calendar, but I welcome the members of the committee to remove it so we can discuss items of interest and concern and importance of the committee members if they would like to discuss having items on our future agendas for our meetings. Madam Clerk, can you do the roll call the motion is to approve the consent calendar.
Yes, this is for the consent calendar, item one, and receive and file numbers 2 and 4. Ashley Akin,
Present but not voting.
okay, thank you. Cindy Allen,
Aye.
Valerie Mesqua, Gary Boyer, Drew Boyles,
Yes.
Wendy Bucknam,
Yes.
Don Caskey, Tanya Doby,
Yes.
Deborah Dorst Parada,
Present but not voting.
thank you. Keith Ike,
Yes.
Bob Engler,
Yes.
Rosa Espinosa,
Yes.
Wayman Furman, Claudia Frometta, and Margaret Finley. I have you on Zoom, but I don't see a
And-
notice
and-
location.
And I cannot vote, but I am
Oh.
meeting, but I'll see you all at the RC.
Okay, great. Thank you. Camilo Garcia, Marsha Goodman, Cecilia Hub,
Abstain.
Mark Henderson,
Yes.
Linda Johnson,
Aye.
Kathleen Kelly,
Yes.
Tammy Kim, Lauren Kleiman,
Yes.
Matt Levere,
Yes.
Jet Liano,
Yes.
Annie Marshall,
yes,
Casey McKeon,
Yes.
John Marish,
Yes.
Geneva Mahata, Joseph Morbito,
Yes.
Suzette Mullins,
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. George Nava,
Yes.
Ariel Pay, Misty Perez, Freddie Puta,
Yes.
Gabriel Reyes,
Yes.
thank you. Rocky Rhodes,
Yes.
thank you. Sylvia Robles,
Yes.
Andrew Sarega, David Shapiro,
Yes.
Becky Shevlin,
yes,
Mary Solorio, Helen Tran,
Yes.
Equinetta Warren,
Unable to vote, but I'm on the meeting.
thank you. Tony Wu, and Frank Yokoyama.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair, the consent calendar passes with 27 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we move on to action items, I'm calling on Deputy Legal Counsel Richard Lamb.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to make sure we comply with the Brown Act and offer a quick reminder that if you're participating remotely and not at a noticed location, not only can you not vote, but you're prohibited from discussing as a member of the body. However, you're able to offer public comment during the public comment period. Just a friendly reminder.
Action items, item number 5, REAP 2.0, NOFA for lasting affordability funding awards. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any members of the public either in person or online who wish to speak on this item.
Thank you, Yvette. This is an action item requesting the CEHD Committee recommend that the Regional Council award funding for the NOFA for lasting affordability call for applications. On November 3, 2022, the Regional Council approved the NOFA for lasting affordability, or NOFA, as one of the 3 funding areas in the programs to accelerate transformative housing program, which is part of the SCAG REAP 2.0 program framework. The call for applications was authorized by the Regional Council on March 2, 2023, and made $45 million available in grants for creating or expanding regional affordable housing trusts and catalyst funds, or developing new funding streams for affordable housing development. The call for applications was announced on June 7, 2023, and closed on July 31, 2023. SCAG Planning Supervisor Jacob Noonan will now provide a presentation on the call for applications and recommended funding awards. I turn it over to Jacob. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you so much, Chair Yokoyama. Again, my name is Jacob Noonan. I'm a planning supervisor. I'm leading the special projects business unit in SCAG's housing department, and I'm pleased to share with you the funding recommendations for our REAP 2.0 NOFA for Lasting Affordability program. As the chair mentioned, this item begins on page 43 in your agenda packet. And as the chair mentioned, it includes a recommended action for the CEHD Committee to recommend that the Regional Council approve the NOFA for Lasting Affordability funding awards as presented in this report. The NOFA, again, for lasting affordability, which is highlighted in yellow on this slide, is included in SCAG's overall REAP 2.0 program as one of the 3 funding areas in our programs to accelerate transformative housing, or PATH program. The PATH program makes over 88 million of REAP 2.0 funds available for those housing-focused activities that are eligible in each of these funding areas. Now, the NOFA itself made 45 million of these funds available for projects that support program level investments in emerging and existing trusts by providing funding for consulting or direct funding to establish or increase the impact for affordable housing through new and local and regional funding sources, new strategies and business models, new and existing loan products and funding tools. The eligible applicants for the NOFA included entities managing an established or planned housing trust or land trust or catalyst fund for, or with a mission-driven focus on increasing affordable housing supply and lasting affordability. The NOFA for lasting affordability call for applications was open on June 7th and it closed on July 31st. The call was announced in the SCAG newsletter and by direct email e-blast to members of our SCAG housing interest list. SCAG staff announced the open call at Council of Governments Technical Advisory Committee meetings. The application guidelines, the resources were made available on SCAG's REAP 2.0 website. And on June 14th, SCAG hosted an information session on the Lasting Affordability Program. This was recorded, and along with the questions and the answers session was made available for viewing on our REAP 2.0 webpage. And then, excuse me, during the call, staff hosted office hours and held more than 50 individual meetings with individual agencies and organizations. And so in total, when the call closed, we had 28 applications received. Of these, 3 were determined to be ineligible, and 3 applicants submitted 2 applications each. So the NOFA application itself had required applicants to prioritize applications in the event that more than one was submitted. And so for these 3 applicants, the application that each applicant gave highest priority to was evaluated, while the additional application was set aside to be evaluated in the event that funding remained after the award recommendation was developed. And so we did set 3 applications aside. The recommendation in this report awards all the funds available, and so therefore those second applications will not be considered. So of the remaining 22 eligible applications, these were scored by a selection panel of internal SCAG staff on how each met the 5-path program evaluation criteria. The evaluation panel used the scoring matrices and the guidance included in the funding application. And these 22 applications included requests totaling nearly 130 million in requests, while the amount of funds, of course, were 45 million in the call. And so we have limited the maximum funding award to up to 5 million per awardee to recognize the need to provide funds out into the community, and that we had a great need, but that we had a limitation on the amount of funds in the call itself. So this resulted in 14 of the 22 eligible applications being included in the recommendation. Now, before I move into a little information on the range of projects in the recommendation, just wanted to provide for context the definition of a trust. This is included in our guidelines, and it includes a distinct fund established by a government agency or nonprofit organization that receives ongoing dedicated sources of public or private funding to support the preservation and production of affordable housing and increase opportunities for families and individuals to access decent, affordable homes. So this does include the term catalyst funds as well, in that it is land trusts and housing trusts. Then for additional context, the eligible entities they included cities, counties, joint power authorities, COGS, if they met this definition, housing authorities, and nonprofit organizations. So we had a very wide range of eligibility under this funding call. So in the recommendation, you will see that there's essentially 3 different types of projects that we could group these into. It's based on technical assistance and then on program level investments. Within the technical assistance area, we had there's awarded funds would go to developing new funding streams or programs. This includes explorations around tax increment financing to create streams for affordable housing, and also a program model and strategic plan for La Casa, which is an emerging organization in Los Angeles County. This is the Los Angeles County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency, focused on affordable housing and meeting the needs for formerly homeless individuals and families. We also had technical assistance to develop emerging or expand existing trust funds. And oftentimes these funds will also be coupled with some funds that will be used for emerging loan products or expanding the loan products that these organizations are currently working with. And so we had awarded agencies, the Gateway Cities COG, for instance, who has recently developed an emerging housing trust for the Gateway Cities area, the San Bernardino Council of Governments, who is working on an emerging trust fund itself, and then others. So within our program level of investments, there was some requests. We're looking to fund in the recommendation new loan products and expand existing loan products to create greater impact and effect for that goal of lasting affordability. So without further ado, the funding recommendation, you can find that in your packet on page 48. And the full list of applications that were received on, that's in an attachment that begins on page 53. Again, 14 applications are included in the funding recommendation. And these projects, they represent the highest scores that were of the eligible applications. With the 14th receiving a partial award, of course, with the caveat that these funding awards have been capped at a maximum of 5 million each, that some of these did request higher amounts, as you can see on the sheet, but that we did do that again to create the ability to provide resources out into the greater region. Second to last slide. Again, I've shared this milestone slide with you at your last meeting when we looked at the HIP funding awards. And just for context, to recognize the amount of different funding opportunities that are moving through the region right now, I wanted to share this. This does include the 3 PATH programs, and it also includes the Subregional Partnership Program. So in total, this represents about 120 million in REAP 2.0 funds that are being made available through these different funding programs. I've highlighted the NOFA in yellow again on this slide, so you can see how we've moved, progressed from June and July with our open call and office hours through our evaluation and the recommendation. And then following the regional your action today and the regional council's action today, we would move forward with the scopes of work and MOUs so that we are able to release these funds and get these programs moving at the beginning of this next year. So in conclusion, thank you. I'm available for your questions, and I turn it back over to you, Chair Yokoyama.
Thank you, Jacob. I will now entertain comments from members of the CEHD Committee. Just a reminder, if a member of the body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe but may not participate in any discussion or voting of this body. Do I have any in-person members who would like to speak? I call on John Mirish.
Thank you. I'm guessing that the scoring is kind of not a public document, but, and again, full disclosure, I'm on the board of La Casa. I see that La Casa got, almost only about 1/10 of what they requested. You look at an organization like MTA, which is very well funded. La Casa, as you probably know, has no funding sources now. What was it that that caused the scorers to rate LACMTA, the MTA, so highly versus La Casa? It would be useful for us to know when we're going forward to try and get grants, because as said, our organization is a broad-based, not just a transportation agency, but an agency whose sole mission is to provide for affordable housing, to produce, preserve, and then also tenant protections, which I feel are very much in line with the overall intent of these funds.
Yeah. So in our scoring process, we've reviewed each of these independently against how they met our 5 evaluation criteria. And at this time, we're offering debrief meetings to each of our applicants following the regional council's action, and we're happy to meet and work through these questions and answer these questions with each of the applicants. But they were scored independently against how they met those requirements. And the La Casa application, we are proposing the recommendation be to fund their program model and their strategic plan. And so this would help the organization in its structural capacity to stand up and move forward as an emerging organization.
And if I can just reiterate Jacob's point, we've reached out to all applicants to make ourselves available for debriefs upon request to help them understand where there were areas that could be improved to help them, again, as you noted, pursue other funding opportunities as well.
Jacob, are the scores available?
So the way that we've illustrated here shows the placement of the applications based on how they were, how they scored. We can make the final score available upon request for folks. And again, I think the key thing is to really take us up on the opportunity for debriefs, so that we can provide greater clarity or answer questions about where applications could have scored more competitively, or where there there could have been more information, et cetera. Their goal is really to support folks to pursue additional funding and understand how things could have been improved.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So applicants can get the details of their scores on their applications if they reach out to SCAG.
Yeah.
Yes. And on the chart, on our packet, page 48, the placement is based on the score.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other? Okay. So I call on Bob Engler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just save me doing some math and whatnot on this. It's always nice to see what the bottom line is going to be as we move forward toward 2030 or 2031. About how many affordable units do you think this effort will produce?
I'll have to get back to you with that number. We do include reported anticipated outcomes with the project descriptions for each one, but perhaps towards the end of your meeting, I could come back with what that totals out to. Those descriptions begin on page 49 and go through 51. So happy to come back with that number if you like.
I did do so real quick math. It's around 4,000 that you've listed plus one other agency with a possible 10,000 affordable units. But that was just a possibility. I was wondering how firm those numbers were.
Those are estimates at this time, and they do rely on leverage and other funds that are these funds, these REAP 2.0 investments are going to bring into these organizations. But at this point, it's their estimates, and as we all know, that it's very much based on market conditions, on the ability to move projects steadily through our organizations, processes on the available of additional funds and capacity and support from the community. So, all of those things factor into these numbers. We do anticipate being able to report out on the outcomes through the process as we move these projects through to the 2026 expenditure deadline.
Thank you.
Jacob, so again, looking at the NOFA funding recommendation before the committee, I was just wondering, because a committee member, Mirish, brought up La Casa, which was the 14th and final approved application, is the result of their recommendation of 660,000, was that just the fact that that was the remaining amount of money left in the $45 million? And that's why they got 660,000, because that was what was left in the $45 million. And that's why number 15 got nothing, because number 14 got what was left in the $45 million.
Yes, that is exactly the situation. So again, we did look at this in terms of being able to provide the greatest amount of opportunity and access across the region, recognizing that we had several very high dollar requests. So we set the 5 million cap at a point that would be meaningful for organizations that are using loan products and other funding tools. We recognize that planning endeavors could be accomplished with less funds, but we recognize that 5 million as a cap. So we did go down the list, funding up to the request up to that 5 million. The remaining was 660,000. We have had a preliminary conversation with staff that are representing La Casa. They've indicated that they are going to accept the award and that it's something that they can achieve some of their planning processes with. So we've noted here in the project that it would be for this program design and strategic plan. Their application had actually included additional products beyond that in explorations, but this was what we've checked in with them on. So it is a funding award that would be meaningful.
Thank you, Jacob. Okay, I call on Tanya Doby.
Thank you. I have a quick question about the evaluation criteria and verbiage specifically. is there a breakdown on what each of these categories mean? Because what I've learned in my tenure as a council person is that some of it is very often subjective. So, and I assume that y'all went over it when you came one-on-one and you met with people, but is there somewhere that they could have looked as a reminder to say, oh, this is exactly what's being looked for. So this is how I lead to a transformative, significant, beneficial impact instead of it being open to my own understanding of that.
I appreciate you lifting up this question, and we've said this transformative, significant, beneficial impact many times. We did provide a lot of information and guidance on what that means. It's language that's directly out of the REAP 2.0 state guidelines, and the state guidelines define what that means. It's quite a large paragraph, so I'll spare you today on the full definition, but it is included verbatim in our funding application and in our guidelines. And we did take a significant amount of time in our office hours and in our information session to explain what this meant. As you see here in the evaluation criteria on page 46, a simple way to approach this would be to recognize that transformative, significant, beneficial impact is met by accelerating infill development that facilitates housing supply choice and affordability, affirmatively furthering fair housing, and reducing vehicle miles traveled. So those are really the three major buckets within that definition, and that's how they were scored. You will also notice, just to highlight this as well, this area was worth 45% of the score. That was a directive from the state and in conversation with them, and that each one of these should be evaluated on a percentage that was equal. So each one is set at 15%. You're welcome.
Okay, I call on Kathleen Kelly.
Thank you. Could you provide a brief and simple explanation of the difference between a trust fund and a catalyst fund?
I'm going to give you my understanding of the definition. As you saw in my slide, we've included catalyst funds as part of the definition for a trust fund. In my definition, a catalyst fund is funds that are readily available early on for quick actions. These are funds that can be accessed very quickly, oftentimes in advance of state or local funds that may take a protracted process in order to be issued. A catalyst fund can be issued more so as in the terms of 30 days or so. So again, these are early funds that are available at the front of projects. So if an organization, a housing developer needs funds to do site exploration or to do some pre-development work around initial environmental assessments, or to see if a project's feasible, that these funds are quickly accessed to go into this project in order to make them competitive with the open market. Because of course, affordable housing developers are in the market with in that speculative market with market rate developers, and they need access to the same types of funding and cash that market rate developers have so that they can compete to get sites so that they can build housing. I know that's a little longer than you wanted. Apologies for that, but I thought it would help for the context.
Jed Liano, please.
Thank you, Chair Yokoyama. I just want to thank my SCAG staff and my colleagues on the committee on behalf of the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust. This award is going directly into a revolving loan fund, which has been a crucial tool in helping developments lock in parcels. There's a development here in Claremont that is developing 75 units for homeless veterans, and they're not scheduled to secure tax credits or begin construction until 2025. And when you consider the fact that they have now locked in the land price, if developments are waiting to close on land parcels, waiting for tax credits, it's entirely possible that the deals can just become unfeasible. And so I hope that these revolving loan fund opportunities can continue throughout the region. And for anyone who's interested in pursuing that, even at a more local level, whether it's a city or a cohort of cities. Strongly encourage anyone to reach out. Really effective tool in helping developments secure funding and stabilize their project budgets. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that information, Jed. Do I have any other members of the committee who wish to speak? Do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve from Tanya Doby and a second from Wendy Bucknam. Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. Cindy Allen,
Aye.
Valerie Mesqua, Gary Boyer,
Yes.
Drew Boyles,
Yes.
Wendy Bucknam,
Yes.
Two more
Don Caskey,
information items, 40 minutes. So we're on track
Don Caskey,
to end before 11:30.
Tanya Doby,
Yes.
Right?
Keith Ike,
Yes.
Bob Engler,
Yes.
Rose Espinosa,
Aye.
Raymond Furman, Claudia Frometta, Marshall Goodman, Mark Henderson,
Yes.
Cecilia Hubb,
Yes.
Linda Johnson,
Yes.
Kathleen Kelly,
Yes.
Tammy Kim, Lauren Kleinman,
Yes.
Matt Levere,
Yes.
Jed Liano,
Yes.
Annie Marshall,
Yes.
Casey McKeon,
Yes.
John Marish,
Yeah.
Geneva Mojado,
Yes.
Joseph Morbito,
Yes.
Suzette Mullins,
Yes.
George Nava,
Yes.
Ariel Pay, Misty Perez, Freddie Puzza,
Yes.
Gabriel Reyes,
Yes.
thank you. Rocky Rhodes,
Yes.
Sylvia Robles,
Yes.
David Shapiro,
Yes.
Becky Shevlin,
Yes.
Mary Solorio, Helen Tran,
Yes.
Tony Wu, and Frank Yokoyama.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair, item 5 passes with 29 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Information items, number 6, development streamlining efforts, project overview. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any members of the public, either in person or online, who wish to speak on item number 6.
Thank you, Yvette. This is an information item. On December 3, 2020, SCAG Regional Council adopted the REAP 1.0 work program that directed REAP funding into projects and programs that increase housing supply and accelerate housing production in the region. SCAG partnered with a consultant team to initiate the development streamlining project. Over the past 2 years, SCAG staff with the consultant team has developed informational streamlining materials and conducted several workshops to educate stakeholders around available streamlining and exemption tools to accelerate housing production. Today, SCAG Senior Planner, Nashia Lalani, and consultant, Dr. Edith Medina, Associate Planner from Civic Solutions, will present an overview of this effort. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair Yokoyama, Nasha Lalani, Senior Regional Planner with the Housing Unit. I also have with me today a member of the consultant team, Dr. Edith Medina, who will be co-presenting with me. And I also want to acknowledge Legion Sun, Principal Regional Planner, who is a co-project manager with me on this project from SCAG. So I will be providing you with an overview of our project progress and milestones to date. And then Dr. Edith will be doing a deeper dive into some of the materials that we've produced so that you can take a closer look, and we're happy to take any questions that you may have. So with that, this project essentially, as Chair Yokoyama explained, was in response to the funds that we received under REAP 1. Our intent was really to provide user-friendly informational and guidance materials to a range of stakeholders, not just jurisdictions, but to essentially provide them with the tools and a better understanding of how they can expedite reviews of housing projects at the local level. In that vein, we also provided facilitated workshops, and we are continuing on with some TA or technical assistance to really spread awareness around the materials that we've produced, as well as answer any specific questions that folks may have as they're looking through the various state laws. As you can imagine, and the folks in this room know, legislation is constantly changing, so we're doing our best to keep up with that and make sure that we're really walking through our materials with folks so that they understand how they can use it and also how they can keep up to date on any changes that are made to it. I don't think I need to elaborate to the folks in this room and online why this project is important, but amidst this affordable housing crisis, hopefully this can make a small impact for jurisdictions that may not have the capacity to really explore some of these state laws and expediting tools on their own. And we did try to have a very far reach for this. So it wasn't limited to just jurisdiction staff. We really tried to reach out to consultants, developers, and others. And you'll see that as I sort of talk through some of the project progress. So this project was kicked off about 2 years ago. We started with a pretty comprehensive survey that we circulated in early 2022. The intent of this survey, which was developed in collaboration with our consultant team, was to really understand, kind of the general demographic information of the folks that we were working with, what the existing familiarity was with the CEQA streamlining and exemption tools, what the existing knowledge was around state laws, and then kind of where we could make an impact, what the gap was that folks were feeling about this information that's out in space, but sometimes we don't have easy access to it. We had over 160 respondents to our survey. It was a combination. So as I mentioned, we had some city planning staff, we had some nonprofit developers, we had consultants, we had other community members that responded to this survey. There was some general familiarity around what some available streamlining tools were. And as you'll see, over half of the respondents, however, indicated that they just didn't have the programs and processes to really implement this at the local level, largely due to lack of staff time and just understanding of what they could really do to streamline housing projects at the local level. And most jurisdictions indicated that some sort of additional support, which hopefully, as you'll see, we've tried to provide through our materials, would be significantly helpful as they received and reviewed projects. So ta-da, here come our materials. We produced 14 total PDFs that I'll show you and that Dr. Edith will also walk you through some samples. 8 were focused around CEQA streamlining, 6 focused on administrative review processes. As you'll see, the materials include sort of background general information on these state laws, kind of how to go about utilizing this exemption or streamlining tool. And then we also tried to include some implementable items within these guidance materials. That included checklists, flowcharts, worksheets, things that we're hoping that others can kind of take and adopt and make their own and utilize as they're reviewing housing projects. These materials have already been published and are readily accessible on SCAG's website. And this is what it looks like on our webpage. So you'll see all the PDFs are clickable. You can quickly access them, you can download them, and you can look through them. This is what they look like when you open them. This is particularly the administrative review processes. Samples, you'll see that there's a general introduction. We kind of provide some definitions. Something to highlight here is, the consultant team did an excellent job really referencing the Public Resources Code and really highlighting and footnoting where this information was pulled from. So if someone were to just get a brief overview and they wanted to go back and really look at the code and understand this particular law, they could do that because it's easily citable and referenceable for them. We included a range of flowcharts, again, to help folks identify, if they meet the qualifying criteria for this particular legislation, what would kind of keep them down to getting that approval through this particular law, or how they would maybe check out if they didn't qualify. Similarly, as I mentioned, we had really easy worksheets. We were hoping that, jurisdictions and others could literally print these and just look through if they had a project at the counter, whether they maybe met this criteria for that particular state law or exemption tool. These are some of the ones around CEQA streamlining, again, providing the general background and introduction. And then in these ones, we also included various matrices to, again, help assist with understanding whether you meet the qualifications. I would also like to highlight that this project has already received an award earlier this year through the Association of Environmental Professionals, California State Chapter. We received an award for merit for these guidance materials, and I have it here so you can see it if you want. But yeah, it was a nice accomplishment for us. We're trying to, oh yeah, I mean, it's a little transparent, but you can see.
Yay.
But hard work. But we're really trying to utilize this and maybe future platforms to create awareness that we've produced these materials. So it was nice to receive that recognition, and hopefully we got more hits for folks that wanted to see what we produced. I will quickly touch on some of the technical assistance that we've done beyond the materials that were published before I turn it over to Dr. Edith. We did 4 90-minute workshops as part of the scope for this project. The topics are listed for you here. Overall, we had over 300 attendees on a virtual platform across all 4 workshops. Participation was definitely higher in the first 2 workshops, so there was more interest around administrative review processes versus CEQA. Nonetheless, the workshop recordings are available on our website, and so are the PowerPoint materials. So again, we tried to create a trail and record of everything we produce for this project, so anyone can easily go to our website and review the videos or download the materials if they missed it. Thereafter, we hosted 1 virtual 90-minute office hour session. As you can see, it was attended by a diverse range, again, of stakeholders. We had a city planning staff, a nonprofit staff, and a developer participate. And this was really an opportunity for more one-on-one if folks had really detailed follow-up questions after the workshops. We didn't see as much of a demand other than like the 3 or 4 folks that signed up, but we are continuing other technical assistance, which I will, or Dr. Edith will touch upon at the end of our presentation. And with that, I will turn it over to her so she can walk us through some of these materials.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's nice to be here. So as Nasha mentioned, we had developed a lot of our materials, and what I'm going to go over with you is just to kind of get a glimpse of what these documents are. When we've created these materials, what we really were thinking about, most of our audience, or actually those that will be reviewing these or utilizing, would be, the planners that are reviewing the projects themselves, right? They receive the applications. And then the others obviously would be the consulting firms and others also helping the local governments. So this one, and on this slide, you will see that planners can utilize, for instance, the guide materials for SB 35 and SB 330 to learn more about what the law is, when it passed, the purpose, where it is in the citation. A lot of the bills that were passed, they changed certain sections of the government code. So I know we refer them as SB 35, SB 330, but then the last couple of years, we've definitely seen so many other bills have passed, and they've continued to change and update some of these, housing and streamlining sections of the law. And then the next is that they could also learn about what projects they qualify, so they can utilize the materials and they can see, okay, when they review the applications, they can look and say, okay, this is the housing type I'm looking for. If they also meet the objective standards, any site requirements and so forth. And I will show the PDF when we look into one of the materials. And we also included a description of the streamlined approval process. And it includes a flow chart, and Nasha also showed you what it looks like very quickly. And we pulled a list of resources with hyperlinks, so it'll be easier for the planners to see where are other resources available for them. In addition, a checklist on how to see if their project qualifies, and a description of any other new bills or case law that have modified the law. However, we also provided other information of other bills that have modified the law from the workshops that we presented as well. So I'm going to click on here for SB 35 material. I don't know if it. Okay. So as you can see here, this is for SB 35. So planner will look at this and say, okay, looks
Doctor,
like
we don't see the document. We still see the deck
Oh,
on our
okay.
end. I don't know, Edward, if that's something we can sort out. Maybe switch screen.
Yeah. Okay, great. Perfect. Everyone can see the document. Great. So as you can see for the SB 35 guidance materials, we have the title. And so a planner would go and look and see, they don't, they know that the applicant has decided they want to actually go through the SB 35 streamline approval process, but a planner may not know and understand what the process is like, or maybe pretty overwhelmed to understand. So they can utilize this material and say, okay, I will immediately they look and say, okay, well, if the project qualifies, no CEQA is required. So this is great. So we have an introduction section, and then we have, the eligibility for streamlining for SB 35, housing types. We have definitions for each of, the site requirements as well. So here we see, a project would have to be a multifamily development containing at least 2 or more. And they have to be consistent with objective standards. And then the site requirements, then there's a list of it with also explanations along with it. So I hope that, you can see that this material is really helpful. If there is perhaps, a senior planner that may be too busy to actually train a planner, so then they can just point to this material and say you can look through it, and also watch the workshop because we provide more detail. There are also many other questions that were presented by the planners in the workshops that are recorded, and there's really good questions that we were able to answer. Anyway, so going with this PDF, there's also more information about additional requirements and also labor provisions that SB 35 requires. And then we have a summary of the process for streamline approval. And this goes into more detail that is really helpful for them to understand. There's 60 days for application submittal for projects that of 150 fewer units, and any other modifications of other recent law that passed to change the code, and links to the resources. And then we have our nice process diagram here that simplifies, the previous page that went over the process, and an SB 35 eligibility checklist. Okay. And then the other document, okay, can't see. Okay, I hope you can. Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. And this other document is for SB 330 and also SB 8. SB 8 kind of modified SB 330, but decided to include that. And this is the summary for the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. And it is another bill that housing streamlined, especially for affordable projects, and they have to be in affected jurisdiction. So we kind of actually, explained here the introduction and what jurisdictions apply and do not apply. And then also expanding on, the definition of housing development projects from the bills that actually modify that definition. So, and then you can see also here that we cite case law and also the, government code. We cite them throughout the documents as well. This bill, SB 330, when it initially passed, it changed, many different sections of the government code. So we created a list to kind of summarize of where they are. And so the planners would be, if they ever have any questions, they can look back as well. And also this document can also easily be utilized by even the city attorneys as well. So they know that if they go through this process, but they have some questions, they don't know where it might be, they can utilize this document as well. So it's not just, very helpful for planners. And then the next is, the explanation about the new preliminary application. HCD has provided, a template for that, but every local government can put together one. They also have to be, these projects, have to be consistent with objective standards. We talk about it. And we also, this is really important for SB 330. There's also a limit on public hearing, how many they can, which is up to 5, but also definitions of what a public hearing is counted, because that is also sometimes certain hearings may not be counted towards. Then we go over the application process. I don't want to go through it, but just the, it's detailed as well, and also citing the code. And on this page, we have the flow chart on just a simpler on what the application process looks like, and links to resources here. And we end this document with frequently asked questions. Okay, now I'm going to switch back to the slides. I think needs to. Okay, great. Thank you. So when we presented the workshops, we were very, very happy to see that there's so many attendees, especially for the first two in regards to SB 335 and SB 330. That was one of our first workshops. And another workshop was on density bonus law. And this workshop particular, we have posted, as Nasha mentioned, on the website. So there's a recording for it. And I encourage planners to watch the workshop recordings, because not only just provides a summary of the bill, but we also provide information of other additional case law that have changed these bills and or upgraded and that are not in the guidance materials and is constantly changing. And then the other is also to listen to any answers to really important, crucial questions that they've asked. They're very good questions, and we had attorneys also present in the workshops that were able to answer specific questions that asked by the planners. And they can access all these materials on the website for all the workshops. And I hope that you can encourage, planners in your jurisdictions to utilize these very helpful resources that were put together thoughtfully for them. And I know Nasha had mentioned that we do have an upcoming event where we are going to be presenting at SCAG's Toolbox Tuesday, which is Housing Series Part 2. I know the Part 1 was just recent. The next one is on November 14 at 1 p.m. to 2:30, from 1 to 2:33 p.m. And they can sign up. We have the link here on the slide. And basically what for our, the consulting team and our team for streamlining development projects, we are going to provide more updates on, CEQA streamlining bills and also the housing streamlining bills. We are it's going to be sort of like working with the attorney that I'm going to be presenting with is going to be basically providing a summary of a lot of the bills that have been passed this year. And we don't have a lot of time to do so, but so we're doing it in the machine gun approach of hopefully helpful. That'll be helpful for planners and jurisdictions to be aware of. And yes, this concludes the part of our presentation. And again, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Dr. Medina and Nasha. I'd like to please turn it over to Elizabeth Carvajal for some comments.
I just wanted to let the members know that we will be sending out the presentation for this item following the meeting, so that will be coming your way. Apologies for not having it in the packet.
You'll be emailing that to all of the members of the CEHD committee, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Thank you. Nasha, thank you for your agenda report in our packet. Are any of these PDFs available in hard copies already printed out here in the staff office?
We don't, but we're happy to do so if you think that would be helpful. Again, we don't have hard copies.
Thank you for letting us know. I will now entertain comments from members of the CEHD committee. Just a reminder, if a member of the body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe but may not participate in any discussion or voting of this body. I call on Tanya Doby.
The material is beautiful. It is so spectacular. And my only question is, how do I get similar information for Sequa's redhead, completely rebellious little cousin, A-Luck? Because I need some help. So I think that if there were like a flow chart, or if there were a system in place, or just kind of a hierarchy of who you can contact when you're trying to streamline through that particular advisory committee, it would be glorious. And I understand that I might be the only one dealing with this right now, but as we continue to plan and look for land, I'm not going to be the only one coming up against an airport. So we could be preemptive, right? And kind of get ahead of the game and then help smaller jurisdictions like mine at the same time. Because I would love to be in a room full of attorneys that could immediately answer my questions. Because right now, most people don't even know who A-Luck is, and I cannot get firm answers. So
I'm wondering if this is tied to perhaps a housing element, resources, like what's the process and the different agencies that jurisdictions need to consider, or that, you know, might come upon you as you're going through your process. And so this seems like a resource around housing elements for folks to just understand the breadth of the different agencies that have roles in process and what that flow chart looks like. And so I'm taking note of that as it relates to our housing element. Mm-hmm. Understood.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. I call on John Mirish.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. Looks like from the information, it's true that in some cases, the affordability requirements for the significant streamlining is only 10%. Is that correct?
The material, but can you repeat your question again? Sorry.
That the affordability requirements for some of the benefits of the streamlining is only 10% affordability in some cases.
I mean, sometimes depending on the law or the legislation that you're looking at, the bare minimum to qualify for some sort of exemption is not as high. So it may be that for some of them, 10% is true. It's like 10% total affordable, right?
Only 10%.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And the other thing is, you listed sort of the parking requirements. We know that some of the new rules mean that parking is not necessary if it's within a certain distance of public transportation. Are there any provisions to ensure that people who are living in those units actually don't have vehicles because they supposedly don't need them because of public transportation? So is there anything because otherwise you could have an issue of cars circling the street for parking, and that goes against the intent. So what kind of enforcement is there so that people who are living in units without parking don't actually own cars?
Yeah, so I think the legislation that you're referring to was more recent and wasn't part of the scope of this project. I'm blanking on the exact AB 20. I was just looking at it recently.
I think it was 297.
297.
It was AB or SB.
But that's something that I know that they're giving an update on some of the newer legislation. We can see if we can maybe.
So maybe,
capture that.
well, or if it hasn't been addressed, we should look at it since, as said, the theory needs to match what actually happens. The theory is people are going to use public transportation, then they should, because if they don't, and there's no parking, then that's going to create a series of additional issues and problems that are going to have to be dealt with. So maybe there's a way, maybe there needs to be new policy to ensure that the theory and the practice actually match each other. Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Are there any other members who would like to comment or speak on this item? Thank you, Yvette. Yes, so as Elizabeth shared with us, SCAG will be emailing to the committee the presentation for this item. And as indicated in the agenda report and by the speakers, the project team will be presenting at SCAG's, will be presenting this information at SCAG's upcoming Toolbox Tuesdays session on November 14, 2023. Thank you, Nashia and Dr. Medina. 7, Ventura Council of Governments and Ventura County Transportation Commission Regional CEQA Streamlining REAP Project. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any members of the public, either online or in person, who wish to speak on item number 7.
Thank you, Yvette. This is an information item. REAP funding has been supporting local governments and stakeholders with housing planning activities and projects that accelerate housing production to meet the region's 6th cycle RHNA. One such SRP project is the Regional California Environmental Quality Act, streamlining vehicle miles traveled, adaptive management and mitigation program. The VCOG, VCTC, VMT mitigation project is intended to streamline CEQA approvals for adoption of 2021 through 2029 housing elements by VCOG jurisdictions. Today's presentation to the CEHD Committee on the Regional California CEQA Streamlining VMT Adaptive Management and Mitigation Program will be presented by Mr. Chris Williamson, PhD, Housing Specialist at VCOG, and Mr. Hugh Riley, the Executive Director of VCOG.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is David Kobe. I'm a Senior Regional Planner in the Housing Unit. I'd like to introduce today's project. It was a collaborative effort between VCOG and VCTC on VMT mitigation. It's one of the 2 completed VCOG projects that came out of the Sub-Regional Partnership Program, and the remaining 3 are scheduled to be completed by the end of the year. So today's speakers are Mr. Riley and Dr. Williamson. Mr. Hugh Riley is Executive Director of VCOG. Prior to his position at VCOG, he has over 40 years of experience managing cities, including serving as the Assistant City Manager of Moore Park. He's also quite active in the community and is serving as Vice Chair for Finance for the Moon Park Chamber of Commerce and the President of CEO for Moore Park Foundation of Arts. Dr. Williamson, who's also presenting today, has over 40 years of experience in planning, environmental analysis, as well as applied demography. He's been working as a planner in Oxnard and Long Beach, working on general plans, codes and regulations, energy storage, and large mixed-use entitlements. He's recognized as an APA expert on Census Bureau data and as a Fulbright Scholar and Associate Regional Professor at USC. He holds a PhD in housing analysis, and he currently lives in Delaware, where he serves on the Planning Commission and manages grants for several towns. I'd now like to hand it over to our presenters. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm Hugh Riley, Executive Director of the Ventura Council of Governments. I just want to start out by saying thank you to SCAG and, of course, this committee for the partnership that we have been enjoying over the last year. This program brought our little organization an opportunity to really do something in our county that would help the cities in the county with some of the requirements that they have in order to fulfill our goals for affordable housing. The partnership has been one that we cherish and hope will continue and be strengthened. I want to let Chris Williamson give a more detailed presentation of our project, a brief one, and I believe he may have a consultant that will participate. I think we have some slides, but I'm going to turn it over to Chris. But again, thank you to the committee and to the SCAG, the Regional Council, for giving us this opportunity under the REAP program.
Thank you, Hugh. I assume people are hearing me all right. And I'm going to switch to my presentation and a share screen. Oh, that's my dog. Where is it? Can you tell me what you're seeing on your screen there?
We've got it, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Then I will start the slideshow. Okay, how's that? We have the title slide? Yes, okay. So thank you, everyone. Ventura County has 10 incorporated cities, and of course there's the county, and we have, I think, somewhere between 760 or 800,000 people. VMT, as you know, vehicle miles traveled. This document is pretty big on acronyms. I'm going to move. This is a slideshow that was presented to the Ventura County Transportation Commission, of course, which every county has a CTC, and basically VCOG and CTC developed this together, and we owe a lot of thanks and participation with the CTC staff as well. Funded by REAP 1, as you know. The consultants who did most of the work, of course, is Iteris, Rincon, based in Ventura, and DTA, but mostly was Iteris consultants. The goal here, of course, along with many of the state's goals, is to integrate land use and transportation and through all the different planning approaches and all the benefits that come from that. So that's the background, of course. As you all know, I think VMT, vehicle miles traveled, is a new CEQA requirement, a new analysis that replaced levels of service. Level of service was always focused on getting cars through intersections within one traffic light and not having to be delayed, but didn't really address the number of cars showing up that wanted to go through the travel light traffic signal. So VMT is an attempt to reduce overall travel. That change took effect quite a while ago and is now finally mandatory and working its way into various CEQA documents. A concern about having a new and somewhat difficult metric to deal with, it's basically math, is that you could slow down your CEQA process, add cost and time. And the goal is not to slow down housing development because of a technical challenges with a new CEQA analysis. And there's just a general learning curve of all the people involved to fold VMT routinely into CEQA analyses for projects that require a discretionary review. And of course, many affordable housing projects are now exempt anyway from CEQA. But what this program does, intended to do, is help project developers, actual development companies.
Excuse me, Chris, could you make your presentation full screen? Because we only see.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Let me see where swap presenter duplicate slideshow. You're asking me to find
right there. If you go to display settings on top.
Display settings.
And then go ahead and swap.
Swap. Ah, how's that?
There you go. Yep.
All right. Thank you. Sorry. At the bottom here, the AMP, a great acronym. We have lots of acronyms here. starts with the CTC, the County Transportation Commission, and their countywide traffic modeling. They then determine which areas in the county have low VMT versus high. This is all available to basically to the public as well as to the various 11 jurisdictions to use to create your VMT from a project description. And then if you're in excess of a VMT threshold, how we can reduce your VMT so you don't trigger a CEQA mitigation or a CEQA documentation only for VMT. This will make more sense. Give me a moment to get through this. So the grant we started about 2 years ago. And again, the purpose here is to streamline, not trying to avoid VMT, but to streamline the CEQA review process and avoid having to create an environmental impact report, which could cost quite a bit of money and take 9 months to a year for solely one purpose, because your VMT is too high. It exceeds a threshold set by whatever jurisdiction you happen to be in, or you're the jurisdiction yourself, the city or a county government, having the VMT in excess of your own threshold. You pick the threshold, but the VMT is just too high. How can we avoid that whole extra step in the CEQA process with this program? It's an optional program. I'll walk you through the document. It's what I'm leading up to. But we have standards in there, a lot of information and so forth, and contacts, and that's where the document's available. And finally, REAP 1 is continuing to fund outreach and training to our 11 jurisdictions, and some of this will continue possibly into REAP 2.0. So I'm going to these were the slides that were used when the program was adopted back in May by the County Transportation Commission. What I'm going to do now, if you bear with me, is switch to the document itself. I think I need to go back to share screen, turn it off, and turn it back on again. Can you tell me what you're seeing right now? I want to show you this document.
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay. Do you see the blue and white page now?
We can see it.
Okay, thank you. So this is a PDF.
Chris, enlarge it.
Well, it's
Not quite. If you give us 1 second, there we go. Got it.
We're good?
You can see it? Okay.
Yeah, this is the actual document in the PDF version. I'm on page, obviously the cover page is 150 PDF pages. So this was adopted on May 12th by the Ventura County Transportation Commission. And I'm not going to obviously show you the entire thing. I want to highlight a few pages, but let me set the context a little bit. Whenever a local government, as you know, is dealing with a large project, you might run into VMT. It also requires discretionary permits, like a specific plan or something. And many jurisdictions now are beginning general plan updates based on Census 2020, and a general plan will have to have a VMT analysis. And I have found myself and other planners that when you go back to amend previously approved projects, like a specific plan that might have been adopted 15 or 20 years ago and is gradually building out, and you want to change something in that plan, change a land use for a good reason from, let's say, commercial or residential, often CEQA may say, well, now you must do a VMT analysis, even though you didn't do it in the original document. And then you find yourself getting into VMT trouble by trying to do something good, which is get rid of commercial and get some more housing into a specific plan, for example. So again, when VMT becomes the only unmitigated impact, how do we avoid doing a complete EIR and statements of overriding consideration for that simple one problem? I'm going to scroll through the document here. I'm going to go to page 4. And this is kind of the key statement. The purpose of the program is to prevent a situation where the only impact is VMT, and the lead agency has to do additional time and expense of preparing an EIR and a statement of overriding for that one single impact. An added burden, especially for affordable housing that rely on grants and subsidies and so forth. So that's what we're trying to avoid, and that's why it's called streamlining. There are 5 goals, I guess, or components here. We thought we were really clever because they all start with an A. The first one is avoid, if you can, avoid putting a project in a high VMT area. We've identified the low VMT areas in the county, and if you put a project in one of these areas, you probably don't have a problem at all. And that's kind of a screening process. Depending on where you put the project, you may not have any VMT to worry about. If you go through that and then you go to step 2 is to assess through a mathematical process. This is actually calculating the VMT created by your project. So the database that the Transportation Commission has can help you do that. This is one of the technical challenges we're trying to get around by providing anyone really the ability to calculate the VMT. The third component here is to be available to help city and county planning staff and traffic engineers evaluate the VMT in a project and get ready for the CEQA analysis. This would also include helping the CEQA consultants do the same work. One of the problems under CEQA, I think everyone's familiar with, is sometimes you have different consultants doing the same analysis in different ways, and the analysis itself becomes challenged by some party. You know, why is city A doing the math this way and city B is doing it a very different way when it's the same, we're supposed to be doing the same thing. So we have kind of a standard methodology that is more or less recommended for everybody to follow. Part 4 is if you have high VMT, there's a whole bunch of ways here to reduce it. We got to give you the numbers that if you and it's just math. And finally, under B, 4B, if you're stuck and you just can't get rid of that VMT, as the last resort, there's a fee program. So this is not a fee generating program, but it does have a buyout mitigation option. And that's under 4B. And finally, adaptive means that if you adopt this as part of a CEQA document and you cite this program as a way to mitigate your VMT, you're not stuck with the actual measures that you adopted. You can adapt as the program or the project evolves. So you can swap out different things as long as you're achieving your VMT goal. So that's adaptive. If I realize for many of you, this is a bit of too much CEQA talk, and I really don't know how to get around it. But we can always circle back. Here's an idea. Here's a page that tries to just graphically show, you know, we're after this VMT that is above the threshold. The threshold is set by your lead agency. This program does not set a threshold for everyone. It helps you mitigate your way out if you exceed your own threshold. Let's see, on page 15, there's 4 steps. There's the screening, the preliminary assessment, a lot of math, the CEQA assessment, which prepares the document for the CEQA document in the CEQA type language, and then mitigations if you have unmitigated impacts. These are the mitigations that get you down below your threshold and avoids an EIR for only one topic. Bear with me, just almost done here. I promise it doesn't get worse. When we get up to page 28 here, I wanted to show you that there are screening criteria as well for smaller projects. We ended up with a map like this. And basically, if you put your project in the green areas, you probably don't have a VMT problem. If the project is in the orange areas, there might be a VMT problem. And if you know these communities, the orange areas are largely the single family, low density neighborhoods, and the green areas are largely the higher density areas along the 405 freeway and in the downtowns. The reason Oxnard and Simi Valley are grayed out is they have their own VMT programs, but they're welcome to use this if they want to. So that's the screening process. Let's see, we have then, I skip ahead. If you do have an impact and you want to avoid an EIR, we have a whole list of reduction strategies that end up with a large table like this. And basically, if you can incorporate some of these strategies into your project, you could reduce your VMT by some significant, sometimes not much, and sometimes significantly. And these are ways to reduce the generation of VMT from the very beginning. And finally, and I promise this is the final, again, if you cannot completely get rid of your VMT excess or too much VMT, the final out is to pay a per VMT impact fee, which is $1,650 in general per mile. So that could add up, no doubt. And to be avoided if you can, but if you're down to the last 10 or 20 VMTs, you just can't get rid of them. Maybe it's easier just to write a check. And the developer writes the check, presumably, and it would go to that jurisdiction to spend on some type of, like a bus stop or something that helps reduce VMT, goes into kind of a mitigation fund. And if the jurisdiction doesn't want to do it, the Transportation Commission will do it for you. So this is kind of the last resort to buy your way out of VMT, too much VMT, and to avoid that otherwise would generate an EIR only on the one topic, VMT. It's all this is modeled in a similar manner to the air quality cumulative air quality impact fee run by, in Ventura County, it's the Air Pollution Control District, as a way to essentially buy your way out of air quality impacts at a cumulative level. So it's modeled after that program. It's been adopted by the Transportation Commission. It's completely optional for the jurisdictions. It's just available, again, finally, I'll stop, to avoid a one-issue EIR only on VMT in excess of a threshold. So I'll stop there. That's a lot. I apologize, but there's really no way to avoid that. That's what it is. And this document is available on the Ventura County Transportation Commission. I'm sure SCAG would send it to you as well if you're interested in it. And I'll stop there. Let me stop sharing.
Thank you, Chris. I'll turn it back over to David for any final comments and then questions from the chair for the committee.
I'd just like to note, because the document was so big, we didn't attach it to the agenda package, but we can send out this PDF document as a separate link after the meeting.
Thank you, David Kilby. Thank you for your agenda report and for that presentation with our speakers today. I will now entertain comments from members of the CEHD committee. Just a reminder, if a member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe but may not participate in any discussion or voting of this body. So I'll call on Wendy Bucknam.
Thank you. So I just want to thank you for this and those on screen for this really good presentation. And I'm assuming that this VMT tool is currently being utilized by VCOG jurisdictions. And have you received, assuming that, have you received any feedback by local planning staff or developers on the mitigation options that are available on this project's to reduce a project's VMT, and maybe you could share those examples potentially?
I'll answer that one if I can.
Thank you.
The short answer is no. It was just adopted in May. The various jurisdictions, traffic engineers, we have almost a monthly meeting with talking about general plan update, and they're all on a learning curve, basically. So I can't give you an actual project that has fully incorporated and utilized the program so far. But there is interest. And just
John
to follow
Mirisch?
up, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Well, what I was going to say was one of the key things that we found out sort of inadvertently is the technical assistance that this provides. It's a methodology, almost on a web-friendly methodology way of calculating VMT for a project where many people were sort of struggling. How do they even calculate the VMT? So we've got this methodology available. It's rather standardized and adopted. And that's often the first step, the first hurdle to calculate the VMD and then find out you don't have a VMT problem. But you got to get that number to start with. And that's another benefit of this program.
Chris, let me just add an example of a project that's been approved in Moore Park that's going to probably take advantage of this. This is a specific plan project that was approved almost 20 years ago in the infill area of the eastern or the western part of the city. And it involves 755 units of housing, all mixed. There's single family, there's some apartments, there's townhomes, and they will definitely have an impact on the VMT thresholds. And I can assure you, this developer will be taking advantage of this opportunity. So there's just an example of one coming up right here in our little old county that's gonna take advantage of it. So I'm really glad this is here.
Thank you.
John Mirisch.
Thank you. In looking at VMT, which I know, has been going on for a while, is there any way to differentiate between the size and the weight of vehicles? It seems we have a huge number of SUVs and maybe huge cars that may be oversized, and you would think that their impact would be different from smaller, lighter weight vehicles. And if this is something that we're not looking at, shouldn't we be? Because as said, if we're trying to assess impacts, clearly the impacts from a Hummer or a very heavy vehicle is going to be very different from something else.
This is Chris. The short answer is no. It's strictly based on mileage. You could bring up the same issue with electric vehicles, right? If the real goal is to reduce greenhouse gases, and you're driving electric vehicles, shouldn't that be accounted for in the opposite direction? You know, they don't produce or not as much greenhouse gases, hybrids. So, but the VMT is really just vehicle, like the acronym, vehicles of all types, miles traveled. That's it.
But isn't part of it wear and tear on roads? So, you know, I guess emissions definitely are one thing, but the weight is going to be more relevant to cities that would need to accelerate their programs to do such boring things as slurry seal or whatever, depending on those impacts. So I get it. There's the climate aspect to it. There's the ecological overshoot aspect to it. But then there's also a very practical about the way that cities run and to have good roads. And I'm sure you know that there's a curve that if you wait too long, it becomes prohibitively expensive, whereas an ounce of prevention or more actually helps cities keep their roads in better shape.
To my understanding, that's not the real purpose of VMT, but the numbers could be useful, you know, by a public works department. So, but that was not the intent of directly the intent.
So are you suggesting that the VMT use is specifically climate, or is it just traffic, or is it, what is its main function then in this case? Because if we're mitigating impacts, what are specifically the impacts we're mitigating? If it's not traffic, if it's not climate, if it's not wear and tear on roads, which cities have to plan for because it's a public expense. Thank you.
I'll stab at that. To my understanding, over the last 15, 20 years, VMT is focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It's the overwhelming majority or primary goal. And that was climate change. Under Schwarzenegger's bill, what was it? SB 30, I forgot.
38.
Back in AB 32 back in 2006. If that was the right number.
Thank you. Joseph Morabito.
So along that same line, you did mention about electric vehicles, but if it is for greenhouse emissions, then somehow why are those not being included? That or other alternative fuels just seems punitive at this point. So, and then when I hear like write a check or buy your way out, it kind of also goes against the point, at least the way I hear it.
Chris, let me say something about this. You gentlemen are suggesting things that are extremely practical and appropriate, but you have to change the CEQA law first. You have to change the CEQA law first. So what CEQA requires is what we're addressing, and that's the point of the project. So
I appreciate that.
Do any members of the committee, any other members of the committee have any comments or questions?
Well, thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak with your committee. We really appreciate it. And again, we appreciate the partnership we've had with SCAG on this project and future projects to address our affordable housing needs in this Southern California region.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Riley, and thank you, Mr. Williamson, and thank you, Mr. Kyobe, for that presentation. Okay, moving to the chair's report. Welcome to a new member. I would like to welcome to the CEHD Committee from Burbank, Zazette Mullins. Welcome, Zazette.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There you are. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you again for joining the CEHD Committee. I would also like to thank the following member. As a recent member of the CEHD Committee, thank you for all your work. Thank you for your service, and we wish you the best. Celeste Rodriguez of San Fernando. She is transferring to TC. Okay, so the Economic Summit. Mark your calendars for SCAG's 14th Annual Southern California Economic Summit on December 7 at the Sheraton Grand in downtown Los Angeles. The program will explore the major economic factors that inform Connect SoCal 2024, SCAG's draft regional transportation plan, sustainable communities strategy. From generating new jobs to creating efficiency gains for commuters, shipping, and travel. Elected officials and city managers of SCAG's member jurisdictions may attend for free. So CEHD committee members, please make sure you let your city colleagues and city manager know that they may attend the Economic Summit for free. Registration is now open at scag.ca.gov/economic summit. Rush. A reminder that the call for applications for the Regional Utilities Supporting Housing pilot program is now open through November 6. This competitive call will award an estimated $35 million to planning and capital projects in meeting the definition of infill. Recordings of an October 4 information session can be accessed on the SCAG website. In addition, SCAG is offering office hours to support applicants. For more information on the call for applications and technical assistance opportunities, visit the SCAG website or contact SCAG Deputy Director of Planning, Elizabeth Carvajal, at Carvajal, that's CARVAJAL, at scag.ca.gov. And now we'll get the staff report from Yvette Macias, Senior Government Affairs Officer. And one more thank you to a recent member of the CEHD committee, Nick Schultz, has transferred to EEC. Thank you for your service, and we wish you the best, Nick Schultz. And now back to Yvette Macias.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A quick reminder to members that SCAG is hosting Connect SoCal elected official briefings in each county. The first one is this Friday, and they are running until December. This is, again, an opportunity for elected local representatives to provide local feedback on the draft Connect SoCal plan. Please keep an eye out for the flyer. If you have not already received it, let me know, and more information from your local SCAG Government Affairs Officer. Thank you. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Yvette. A reminder that the CEHD committee will not meet in December due to the SCAG Economic Summit. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 4, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. It is 11:21 a.m. This meeting is now adjourned.